Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. It's your host, Matt Zahab. We are buzzing as always. Lovely day in the city. Even better day to record a pod with the one and only Arno Bauer, Senior Solution Architect at BNB Chain, who has over a decade of experience in data management across diverse international environments. Arno focuses on enhancing business operations through the research and application of innovative technologies. At BNB Chain, he specializes in enhancing the core blockchain landscape of the BNB ecosystem and helping its growth through innovation, particularly focused on governance model enhancements. Arno, it's been a minute. We've been rescheduling this for what it seems like years, but we finally got you on. Pumped to have you on, my friend. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for the time today. I'm really looking forward to and discussing about like what's happening right now as on BNB Chain and in the whole crypto world as well.
I love that. It's we did indeed have quite the digital game of tag trying to get each other on the pod here. And we finally did it. And I love that. You guys have some huge news. We are recording on mid-September. This episode will release around September 21st. And a couple of days ago, you guys launched mainnet for opBNB, which is huge news. We'll get into that. But before we do, give the listeners what they want. Tell them a little bit about yourself. Obviously, you are working at BNB Chain, which is the Binance-related actual chain. Binance is in the news 24/7 for mostly good, but some bad. One of the biggest, if not the biggest companies in crypto. We love to see that. Tell me about your past. What did you do before you got into crypto? And why did you make the jump to Big Bad Web3?
Sure. I mean, it's a good question. Like we all have our story on like why we jumped into crypto and how we jumped into it as well. I mean, initially I was mostly working with databases. So that's what you mentioned as well. Like I have a lot of history into data management. So I was always kind of passionate about how to handle data, how to make them more secure, more reliable. And this is where naturally I then jumped into blockchain because at the end, blockchain is just a specific ledger, which is really here to store data and to make it like resilient and let's say proof against any attack as well. So this is what really attracted me back in the days. I joined like most in 2016, 17. So this is when I started jumping into the technical aspect of it and where I started really working on it like on a daily basis. So it's been like a good journey so far for me, like really being able to learn more about it's the core aspect of why we have as well those decentralized ledger, how the consensus is playing a role within the security as well, the resilience against censorship potentiality as well. So this is what I'm really looking forward to try to contribute as well. And this is why I joined like recently BNB Chain to really focus more as well like how we can, knowing that BNB Chain is one of the mostly, let's say, used L1 in terms of daily active users, like how we can really like secure those data that is transiting as well and making sure that people who are, let's say, using Web3 really have, let's say, an edge against applications which are on Web2. Because sometimes it's hard to justify why we are on Web3 and on the cost of utility as well when you want to run transactions. Even if within the BSC network, it's kind of low versus other layer ones, but still it's too expensive to run. So the use cases need to really be like, we need to justify the use of like this technology as well and why we need to have like a decentralized database, decentralized validator, like censorship resistance as well. So all those different problematic around data is something that really attracted me into that space.
Besides what you just mentioned, what else about crypto got you going? Like, what's your inception story? Was it a friend who bought Bitcoin and got you into it? Was it a book you read, an article? Like, what got you into crypto as a whole?
So no, it was mostly the community. At that time I was living in China and in Shanghai mainly. So it was more about like the community that was as well around that time. So we had a lot of discussion about AI, about blockchain as well. So I was hanging up to a lot of different events, trying to get more knowledge myself about these different, let's say, new technology. And this is where it really, like, let's say, ticked on me that, yeah, this is definitely, let's say, the next, I don't want to see it as a wave, but the next evolution of data as well. Like, you know, like we had like books in the day, like, or even like, let's say, rocks, or people were basically drawing on the mountain, you know, like when they had caves. And then we had books, now we had like internet, like everyone had their computers, like their own storage, then we had like cloud solutions. And I think it's more like a standard evolution of all those different architecture. And this is where we are, let's say, Web3. I think Bitcoin was really a great, let's say, example of how decentralized ledger can work out. It was like before Bitcoin, they had a lot of trial and error as well in this specific industry of like people trying to find out how we can build decentralized storage network, which are resilient, which is not something that is easy to build. And I think that Bitcoin really was the first one to really be able to handle all those complexity around decentralized storage, privacy, and security. And definitely like the utilization of, let's say, proof of consensus, proof of stake. It's something that is helping on, let's say, the adoption of blockchain technology, because it's easier for, let's say, some people to easily, let's say, jump on top of it and participate to a network as well. So it's the cost of entry might be a bit easier with proof of stake. So I think it's interesting that we are seeing so many consensus ideation today as well.
It's a great point there. The number of choices you have in regards to building on, multiple layer 1s and layer 2s, it's becoming crazy. And I mean, this is a perfect segue into opBNB. But before we get into that, I'd love if you could give our listeners and myself just a quick primer of BNB. A lot of people confuse BNB Chain with Binance. Obviously, same, but different. I'll let you explain this. Please give us the TLDR on what exactly BNB Chain is, and then we'll get into some of the fun stuff.
Sure. I mean, back in the days, we first had like the Beacon Chain, which was like Binance created this Beacon Chain, which was more like a blockchain for decentralized, let's say, finance. It was a DEX basically. And then they created like Binance Smart Chain, which was more like the smart layer on top of it, like the BNB chain that we know today, which was EVM compatible. But then of course, naturally, like it's kind of split. So now like the BNB ecosystem is really independent and it's not linked to Binance anymore. So it's more like, say, 2 to 3 years ago that this separation really like took place. So now it's really, say, two different entities where Binance is really focusing on a centralized exchange, and BNB chain or BNB ecosystem is really on its own, trying to build those like layer 1, which is like the BSC, which is the BNB smart chain. Then we have opBNB, which is more like the scalable solution on top of it. Then we have currently BNB Greenfield as well in development, which is more, let's say, decentralized storage network, which is still connected and which is having a native integration with BSC. So adding programmability on top of data as well. So BNB ecosystem is quite diverse, but it's really like a different, let's say, it's quite separated from Binance in a way, if I can say so. But definitely the name might still be confused for some people, especially that net history it was called like Binance Smart Chain. So if you just say BSC, people tend to think about it, but now it's more like BNB Smart Chain, basically.
Yeah, it's tough because again, with such a prominent name in the space like Binance, it's like you automatically just sort of pair the two together, right? I mean, it's comparing apples and oranges, both fruit, but definitely not apples to apples. So very interesting stuff. Before we get into opBNB, and again, everything OP related is massive right now, obviously cutting the transaction cost on L2s, more efficiency, more speed. It seems like a no-brainer through and through on all ends of the spectrum. But before that, just give me a quick sort of outlook on what you and the team have done over the last 3 years, because I think you're guest number 2 or 3 from BNB coming on the pod. You guys always have so much stuff to offer, some great alpha, and so much news, always moving and grooving. So in your last couple of years at BNB, or at least just BNB as a whole, what exactly has gone on in the last 3 years? And we can then get into some of the future stuff as well.
So I think one of the main, like, let's say, focus on the BNB like side initially was really like to provide a strong and reliable infrastructure, which means like that's one of the reasons why that's the number of validator might not be as large as other chain initially, because the focus was really on providing something which with high throughput and really something that is reliable. So let's say the capacity of the BNB Smart Chain is 4 or 5 times higher than the one on ETH. So it's something that is quite drastically like enhanced versus, let's say, other L1 where like, and this is where we saw as well the boom during DeFi, where like we had a lot of transactions happening. Because for people, I mean, if you want to do a swap of, let's say, 50 or 100 USD, you don't want to pay like 200 USD in fees, and it's nature like right now on ETH, but it's something where like for the use cases and for people, it was not usable like that. So this is where like BNB Smart Chain was really, let's say, the home for those like users and those retail users who really had the possibility to really interact on chain with a low cost and especially a high throughput, which means that the finality was here as well. So like whenever you sign a transaction, it's not getting reverted because the gas fee was not set correctly, or like then you need to increase the fee, send it again. But meanwhile, we're still losing some ETH, for example. So like on the BNB chain, like due to this high throughput, the capacity will like increase drastically, and like the transaction look quite it's affordable for most of the people. So it's something that we really worked heavily on it. Delivered as well heavily on trying to provide more resilience of the network itself, which means that we increase drastically as well the number of validator. It doesn't seem a lot versus order, but it's still like a lot, like when you, in terms of percentage, for example, of increase. And as well in terms of, let's say, providing more consensus updates in order to provide what we call the fast finality. Because as you know, for example, on Bitcoin, like whenever you send a transaction, you need to wait. Once it's in a block, so first you need to be lucky to be in a block. If the transaction clears an increase recently, like thank God we have more activity as well right now, which I'm quite happy with because it's showing that there's a utility as well. So definitely like once it's validated, you still need to wait like 6, 7 or 8 block usually to really have the true finality, or that's what usually exchanges are waiting for before you can really like trade it on an exchange, like when you're sending or withdrawing Bitcoin. On ETH, it's still like you need to wait as well a little bit, but now on the BSC, with this new fast finality consensus that we've updated, you need to wait between 3 and 4 blocks, which is, for example, between 8 and 10 seconds, which is something that is really fast for in terms of finality. So it's something that can drastically like increase the usability and the experience of the usability of a layer 1. And now we are trying to focus more like on expanding and connecting from those capabilities, how we can even extend it further with opBNB that we'll discuss further, and with BNB Greenfield as well that we are going to discuss further. So now that we have a strong, let's say, base foundation, that is like how we're trying to connect to it and try to expand it as well. It's kind of a universe, like it's not stopping at one angle. It's like growing and growing and growing.
It's truly an ecosystem. That was very well described. Thank you for that. And obviously, congrats to you and the team. Huge launch, smooth as usual, as per anything Binance and BNB related. You guys processed more than 35 million transactions on chain and have deployed over 150 decentralized applications on testnet. opBNB is officially launched, moving to layer 2. For the main reasons of alleviating congestion, reducing transaction costs with an average fee of 0.005 cents, considerably cheaper than other chains. This is huge. Was this just a no-brainer by the team to be like, hey, our community, our users want something cheaper, more efficient, quicker, blah, 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 the whole 9 yards. And you guys are like, okay, it's time, build it out, launch it. Like OP that has blown up, obviously Coinbase related. Did that have anything to do with that? Were you guys looking at them and being like, wow, look at the growth and trajectory and potential, the ceiling they have there, how much good conversation is happening in regards to OP? Was this like, okay, we got to do the same? Like what was the whole rationale behind launching opBNB?
Sure. I mean, we are experiencing congestion today, for example, on the layer 1. So it's not something that was necessarily do right now due to congestion. But it was more, let's say, community developer who were like discussing about it, like having a lot of feedback from like projects as well, which are running on top of BSC, like having, because as you know, right now is the account abstraction or a lot of projects as well, let's say, sponsorizing transaction on behalf of the user. So as, of course, like as a project, the more you grow, and if you are sponsorizing, let's say, the fees for your user, like it's having a higher cost as well for you to run, like, for example, game or specific like social dApp, So we had a lot, let's say, the community developer BNB Chain like discussed a lot about this problematic of like, sure, we are not having congestion today, we are not so expensive today, but we still having like a struggle to really onboard more people, because the more people on board, the higher the cost will be for us. So we need to get ready and be prepared as well, like before we have a new wave of user coming. And then like the community of developer really started looking as well what's happening on the ZK event, on the ZK side, on the OP side. And definitely I would say like the OP stack, because opBNB is really based on OP stack as well. So like huge congrats to OP stack for delivering what they delivered. But it's something that is really, let's say, replying to a lot of questions that the current, let's say, industry has. And OP stack is really able to answer most of them.
Yep.
So first of all, it's EVM compatible, as you know. So it's like, it's great for developers and builders. They can easily like redeploy on the layer 2 and be more scalable as well, or deploy even their own, let's say, fork of OP stack and have their own, let's say, layer 2 for their own users. So there's a lot of, let's say, added value to utilizing such a decentralized and community-driven solution as OP stack and like EVM compatible. So this is one of the reasons we decided to build on top of it as well, because it's like really like something that we believe right now is the go-to solution when we are talking about scalability and higher throughput as well for community.
I agree. Which of the sort of main three being speed, transaction, and efficiency. Of those three things, what did the community ask for the most? Because I always wonder. For me, again, it depends on what transaction I'm using. It's very nuanced. It's very subjective. But I feel like anything else in life, price, finances, money, freedom, all synonymous, whatever you want to call it. I find like that usually is the number one reasoning. But was there one that outweighed the others in regards to, actually launching this and making it happen? Was there one value prop that the community really kept asking for?
The take I would say is like more efficiency, which means efficiency in forecasting as well the cost of using it.
Right,
like usually
right.
on L1, there's a lot of variation in like transaction fees as well. So usually like the more activity, the more like increase in fee you have. So having, let's say, something that is more efficient and hopefully like, okay, we know that there's going to be a block every 1 second because opBNB is like a block every second. There is this specific gas limit. We know that based on the current, let's say, on-chain activity, the price is quite fixed. So there is no, let's say, fluctuation in price as well on opBNB versus, let's say, other layer 2 on ETH. So it's more like the efficiency of like being able to forecast, for example, for a project, the cost of running, or for a retail user to really forecast, okay, if I want to do 100 transactions per day for the next 6 months, I can already kind of understand what's going to be the cost like today, but what's going to be the cost in 6 months as well. Because that's more like, I would say, the efficiency on that side to really be able to have a stable infrastructure in terms of like throughput and in terms of cost of running as well.
Interesting. Really good points there. Arno, we're going to take a quick break and give a huge shout out to our sponsor of the show, PrimeXBT. And when we get back, we are going to discuss Ethereum Killers, the present day summary-ish of L1s and L2s, and how Greenfield is a leader in programmable storage. But until then, huge shout out to PrimeXBT. We love the team at PrimeXBT, longtime friends of cryptonews.com and longtime sponsors of the Crypto News podcast. PrimeXBT offers a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet, you can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. PrimeXBT is also running an exclusive promotion for listeners of the Crypto News podcast. After making your first deposit, 50%, that is 50% of that first deposit will be credited to your account as a bonus that can be used as additional collateral to open positions. The promo code is CryptoNews50. That's CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Again, that is CryptoNews50 to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Now back to the show with Arno. Mate, let's jump into Greenfield. Candidly, I honestly didn't even know this was a thing until I started doing research for the show. And this is one of the things I love about crypto, where I will find out something so interesting, or I will find sort of a side product of the main product from the guest that comes on. And I'm like, I never heard of this. I didn't know this was a thing. And now I have knowledge of a new product or service in the crypto space that is an absolute behemoth and that is very useful. I'd love to flip the ball over to your side of the court. Give me the TLDR, the quick elevator pitch on what Greenfield is and how it is a leader in programmable storage.
Sure. Basically at Greenfield, like we had a lot of research in the community as well about like what is decentralized storage, what are the current, let's say, solution that is provided by the community. And we really saw that there is something that is there's a missing link in all those solutions, which is more about how can we really extract the value of data. When I say we, I mean more like the creator, for example, or the one which is really holding the data. How can they really, let's say, extract value out of it in a transparent and programmable way, such as, for example, we know that we have Solidity contract on the L1, which is people can use DeFi, can have NFT, but this is more, let's say, on a smart contract basis, but there's no, let's say, value, economical value on top of the data itself. So this is where Greenfield is going, where you can really, let's say, upload your data on a decentralized network, which is like multiple what we call storage provider. But on top of it, there is like a direct native link with the BNB Smart Chain, which means that, for example, if you are uploading your podcast to Greenfield, you could basically ask someone to subscribe to a specific smart contract if they want to be able to have access to this specific podcast that you're uploading. So all the exchange of value of access can be done through a smart contract way. So it can be monetized either in BNB or in stable coins, for example. So all of those, let's say, access management can be programmable, programmatically be programmed in a Solidity contract, for example. So this is where we believe that it can really revolutionize the way that value can be extracted from data. It's not necessarily, let's say, the the value is not in the amount of data that you upload, but more in the value that the data contain in a way. So that's more like what we are looking at.
Very interesting there. Another topic I'd love to get into is the multitude of options we have in blockchain currently with all the L1s and L2s. You're someone who's deep in the weeds in this. You are a back-end guy. You actually understand how these things are built. This is way out of my pay grade. I just use them, but I obviously cannot build them. If you're a builder right now, what's the workflow? Like, how do you go about choosing which L1 or L2 to choose and to build on? I'd love if you could walk me through this, because it just seems there are so many options, and often in life you'd like not a lot of options. I always think of the classic, any type of SaaS where there's always 3 options, right? You have your super cheap free option, you have your most common middle used option, and then the expensive enterprise option. It makes things nice and easy. It only gives you 3 choices. It turns it into a no-brainer, and boom, you're off to the races. But there are hundreds of options to choose from, and it seems like nightmare fuel. As a developer, how do you go about choosing which L1 or L2 to build on?
Right. I mean, usually what I said, like, you want to choose, like, based on your use case as well, like what kind of community you want to, let's say, touch base. Because right now at the end, like, all L1 and different, let's say, community. But for example, on the BNB Smart Chain, knowing that we have such a high daily active user number, like, usually it might be easier for you to find people which are willing to try your application, for example. So usually if you go on chain on a, let's say, alternative layer 1, which has, for example, only 10,000 users, it might be hard for your project to survive. So usually as a builder, you first want to join. And you want to join a web community where there's a lot of, let's say, discussion around development. And a lot of, let's say, for example, if you go to Discord, there's a lot of developer. You can easily find support as well. Because usually, like, when you are starting the issue that you are going to encounter, usually other people have already saw it before. So they can probably help you to easily, like, pass certain bridges or, like, speed up your development as well process in this chain. I don't think that we're going to have any, let's say, for example, ETH killer or BSC killer. I think there's going to be a multitude of different layer 1s as well. But potentially what we might see in the future is maybe, like, each of them might be more heavily connected than they are today. And maybe they're going to share, I don't know, maybe some security feature from one can be shared with the other, and so on. So I think this is where we're going to move ahead in the future, where, like, currently we have bridges between each chain, but maybe in the future we have, like, let's say, more closer, let's say, native connection between each layer 1 in order to strengthen as well the security of each network. That could be like an angle of work as well for the community.
Yeah, nice value prop. And then we got to talk about Ethereum Killers, and just even looking at, the BNB Chain socials and everything, you have people commenting Ethereum Killer, blah, blah, blah. It's like people can launch chains without them being Ethereum Killers. And realistically speaking, without ETH, like, all of crypto is hooped. Like, we're effed. So I don't really get the FUD behind this. I understand the term and why it was coined, because it's sexy, it's right to the point, it enhances discussion, which is everything you want in a term or a meme. But I think it's false 99% of the time. What's your take on Ethereum Killers present day? Do you think there are any Ethereum Killers? Do you think they're all just supplementary chains to Ethereum? What's your TLDR on Ethereum Killers?
I don't know why people like to kill other stuff, first of all. I mean, I think we should, like, first, or, like, really, like, be working all, like, together to try to build, like, better narrative. Because at the end, we still need to think and focus on, like, we are just at the start of this technology. I mean, the killer might not be an ETH killer, but might be a killer of the whole industry. So I think we have bigger issue to focus on, like, instead of, like, trying to kill ourselves. So I think we really should let's say, work together and trying to build a more robust and stronger industry in order to really be able to survive and attract more users. Because at the end, like, Web3 is nice, like, we know the utility of it, but we really need to be able to find a strong utility and incentive in terms of, like, added security and resilience for users. Like, for instance, a lot of Web2 applications are going to stay Web2 because they're really easy to use and they're scalable. But how we can, for example, migrate some into a Web3 environment, knowing that there's a cost associated to it as well. So that's, like, some problematic that we do need to focus on. And this is where L2s are something that is quite interesting as well, in order to, like, lower the transaction fee. Like, having a more scalable solution can really bring more, let's say, new use cases into Web3.
Yeah, and the L2s that are created that have enterprise use cases, I feel like will be the thing that brings in mass adoption when you have the Fortune 500 companies incorporating L2s into their everyday tech stack, where it's built on blockchain tech, but on the front end, it looks like Web 2. You know what I mean? Like the interface is very clean, sleek, easy to use, very simple UI, UX, but on the back end, it's complex Web3, L2 shit. I feel like that's what we need for the next step of mass adoption.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at the end, I don't think that we'll see a lot of users on L1s, because I think at the end, let's say, there's quite some, I don't want to say security concern, but like in terms of like it's taking a lot of ownership if you want to be on L1, if you want to hold your coin, your crypto, like your private keys or your mnemonic phrase, you really need to save everything. So, and usually people don't like to take ownership as well. So I don't think that we'll see a lot of people on L1, but I think like all those L2 or even let's say higher solution can really help on mass adoption, because I don't think that we can, unfortunately, like I do like owning my own private keys, but I think that for a lot of solutions, it's going to be through custodial solution as well, like where people it might be easier for them to own, let's say, hold on-chain asset, but without necessarily fully owning the keys as well to it, because at the end, the risk associated to it is quite high. I mean, we can easily, I'd say, lose our access as well, or either lose it by burning the paper when we should not have burned it, or like in a specific hash. So I think that's still like the risk is still here. So it's not for everyone to be on L1, I think.
Yeah, very well said. Arno, this has been an absolute treat here. A couple more questions and then we'll wrap up, mate. What other areas of crypto get you going present day? Besides obviously L1s, L2s, ETH Killers, everything database related. What else gets you going in crypto, or any crypto related hot takes you have? We'd love to hear them.
Sure, I wouldn't say crypto because I don't think like it's crypto, but I would say more like Bitcoin, I would say. So I think that's something that's really currently interesting to me, like more like trying to understand more, let's say, why it has been created as well, and why like some specific design has been chosen when it was built, and why it's still resilient as of today. So I think that's something that's really currently, let's say, intriguing into like why this specific network is so valuable and so highly as well, like highly when I mean like maintained in a sense that it's not moving. So it's something that I really like as well. I'm trying to understand like why it's not moving and why maybe it's good as well for this specific network that it's not moving in terms of functionality, but it's staying more like as it is today. So that's something that is really intriguing me as of today.
Yeah, I mean, you and I are in the same yacht there. I often think about this as well. I mean, I'd love to hear your 2 cents, but I think it's the classic, and I don't really love the term, but I do believe it's almost digital gold-esque, where it's simply a store of value. Like what, besides sending Bitcoin to someone, like, yes, there was ordinals and there are a couple other NFT use cases and other use cases, but most of them are bullshit. Like the only actual use case for Bitcoin, in my opinion, right now, present day, is holding on to the coins for a store of value, or, transactional, sending Bitcoin. Like, let's say I owe you $1,000. I send you $1,000 in Bitcoin. Like what else do you see as for a use case for Bitcoin right now?
Well, I don't like the term of digital gold as well. And I think maybe that's why I didn't link to it too as early on, because I think this made me a bit like look a bit outside of it. I think it is much bigger than that, based on what I understood today and based on what I understand as well. I do like the idea of like what I'm trying to do as well, it's like spend and replace. So basically like not hold to it as well, but really try to find a utility. So whenever I can spend it, I try to spend it, but in exchange, I just, let's say, buy what I've just spent with the USD, for example. So that's a way as well of looking at it and bringing value to it, to the network as well. But definitely, I think it's I will keep looking into it and trying to focus more as well on, let's say, more a technical side as well, because I think it's quite more, I don't want to say more complex than, let's say, L1, but what I really like as well, it's the privacy feature that it has like inbuilt as well. It is, as we know, like a blockchain is really great, but everything is public. So whatever you do, everyone can potentially see it or find your mine as well and link all the different activity that you had with your own profile. So trying to find some, let's say, privacy feature within, let's say, L1 is something that I think the community could look into as well. And what I like as well about Bitcoin is that there's already a lot of privacy features that are inbuilt, and how to potentially utilize it and pay attention to it is something that is quite fascinating, I believe.
Do you see any consumer-related use cases that aren't already here for Bitcoin over the next 1 to 2 years? Like me personally, Arno, I don't see anything Bitcoin related that can make the price of Bitcoin or the utility of Bitcoin rise. I mean, I hope and I do think that Bitcoin will rise just with the lack of trust in government. Every single day we learn more and more about how the government continues to drop the ball and inflation and the continuous nonsensical printing of money. Again, we can go on for days. We don't need to. Everyone gets this. I do think that will impact the price of Bitcoin in a positive capacity. I feel like people will continue to understand that this is fully decentralized. No one knows who created it. And there is a store of value based on its scarcity and hopefully future utility and present day utility. But my question to you is, are there any sort of consumer or enterprise related use cases that are actually in sort of the roadmap and could come out over the next year or two that could really help Bitcoin, both price discovery wise and utility wise?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin is going to be used not necessarily as like the Bitcoin itself, but not more as a medium of exchange. So and do like, for example, I try to research more about the Lightning Network as well, but I think as a medium of exchange where it's not the Bitcoin exchange itself that you are exchanging, but it's more like something else that you exchange, but you are utilizing the network to exchange. Like, for example, what I like about the Lightning Network is that it's quite like lightning speed, but like maybe the exchange can be done utilizing sats. But in reality, for a user, you are not exchanging sats, you are just exchanging something else. But the underlying security is based on the network itself. And I think there's a flip as well once people start to realize that it's not the Bitcoin which is increasing in value, but it's all the rest which is decreasing in value against Bitcoin. So I think that's like the point of reference as well, where I try to focus on is like the base value for me. It's like, for example, BTC versus all the others. So that's something that I like to do as well, for example, on CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko. Instead of putting the base value, like say in USD, I put it in BTC, for example. So you see it in a different angle as well and in a different perspective as well.
Interesting. I like that. Very interesting. Arno, this has been an absolute treat, mate. I've learned a ton and definitely have some homework. Really appreciate you coming on. And big congrats to you and the team with opBNB. I know that was not a light launch. That was absolutely massive and you guys crushed it. Can't wait to have you on next time. But until then, wishing you and the team all the best. Before you go, please let our listeners know where they can find you. Although you are a ghost on Twitter, you would be great on Twitter.
Right.
Listeners, let's hammer Arno, blow him up on LinkedIn, blow him up wherever, make him get to Twitter account because he would be producing some fire. But before you go, can you please let our listeners know where they can find you and BNB Chain online and on socials?
Sure. So you can find us especially on Twitter and Discord for BNB Chain. So we have a lot of community, which are like, especially for the developer side as well, like on Discord, I think it's the right place. Follow us on Twitter for all the latest news. On my side, it's mainly on LinkedIn, really, where you can find me. I'm not publicly on Twitter.
Amazing. Arno, thank you very much, mate. This was an absolute blast and can't wait to have you on for round 2.
Thanks. See you next time.
Folks, what an episode with Arno Bauer from the one and only BNB Chain. He was dropping knowledge bombs left, right, and center. Huge shout out to my team and his team for making this happen. The listeners, love you guys. Thank you so much for everything. As always, if you enjoyed this one, please do subscribe. It would mean the world to my team and I. Speaking to the team, love you guys. Thank you for everything. Eustace, my amazing sound editor. You are the GOAT. Love you. And back to the listeners. Thanks again, guys. Keep on growing those bags and keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Bye for now, and we'll talk soon.